At his memorial today, Nipsey Hussle's fiancée said he always made her feel so protected, but nothing could protect him from the violent crime that ended his life. The Grammy-nominated rapper-artist was shot and killed last month outside of a clothing store he owned in South L.A. There was not one single open seat inside the Staples Center in L.A. today, an arena that seats 21,000. It is the same place Nipsey Hussle attended the Grammys with his fiancée, actress Lauren London, just 2 months ago. He often talked about the poor choices he made when he was younger, time wrapped up in gang culture, but later was one that would boldly speak out about gun violence.
We ended up connecting, we ended up making music together, we ended up making a brotherhood, we ended up creating a bond. We created something that was special.
During the service, his children and family shared personal stories about his life. At one point, his youngest, a 2-year-old, even tried to take a turn at the mic. His friend and business partner, Karen Civil, read a letter of tribute from former President Barack Obama. Islam leader Louis Farrakhan talked about his legacy, and performers including Janae Aiko and Anthony Hamilton sang in his honor. His name is trending again once again today as his fans and celebrity friends are all remembering his work in the music industry. They're also talking a lot about the community that he helped. Recently, he worked to help inner city where he grew up, investing and helping businesses and hiring some of his former neighbors.
Coming up after the break,